Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. Our lead story of the day is regarding yesterday's White House press briefing, which was standing room only. There were so many reporters stuffed into this room. I've been covering these press briefings for 2 years now, and I've never seen anything like it. A lot of people are showing up to question John Kirby on all the UFOs, the UAPs, the objects, the balloons, the craft, whatever you want to call them, being shot out of the skies all across the United States. Folks, this is the most up-to-date information coming out of the White House. As always, support the show by hitting that like and subscribe button. Your help and support would be greatly appreciated. Well, John Kirby rings off a litany of answers from a litany of questions from reporters. Let's go ahead and roll it.
John, if the objects don't pose a military threat and they don't pose a threat to anybody on the ground, why shoot them down? Particularly because the military is routinely monitoring radar blips and such.
I kind of covered that in the opening statement. Two real reasons here. First, there was a very real potential risk to civilian air traffic. The one shot down on yesterday, was about 20,000 feet. And the two shot down Friday and Saturday were at about 40,000 feet. And as you know, transcontinental air traffic is roughly around 30,000 feet. It depends, of course, on weather. And so because we assessed that they weren't manned and weren't being controlled, therefore left to atmospheric conditions, the real risk to safety of flight was a problem. The second purpose, and I talked about this earlier too, was even though we had no indications that any of these three objects were surveilling, we couldn't rule that out. And so you want to err on the side of safety here in terms of protecting our national security interests, and the fact that these objects could have and likely did at some point in their path transit over potential military sites of ours or sensitive sites. So again, out of an abundance of caution for those two reasons, the president, with the recommendation of his military leaders, directed them to be taken down.
Because it's so unprecedented, should the public be hearing from the president directly on this?
We have been, I think, as transparent as we can be. I won't speak for the president's personal speaking schedule, but I mean, he has been deeply engaged in every one of these decisions. He's been kept informed, including as of this morning, on what's going on with recovery efforts, and he's very much staying on top of the issue and directing his team to make sure we are properly consulting and briefing not just members of Congress but state leaders as well, and of course, we're also doing what we can in the public sphere.
What I find interesting about this is that when you have the White House, specifically the Biden administration, saying that they're being as transparent as they can be, that means they're not being transparent at all. Remember, we saw Karine Jean-Pierre do the same type of line of narrative or messaging coming from that very same podium with the documents that were found at Joe Biden's home, in his garage, next to his Corvette, in his just a litany of documents just spread out all around Joe Biden. So she's saying she's being transparent. He's saying he's being transparent, when in actuality, they're not. But the questions continue.
Wait a second, sir. Excuse me. Thank you, John. What is the president's standard going to be going forward about when he orders an unidentified object shot down?
It comes down to one simple formulation, and that's if at the recommendation of his military leaders he believes that the safety and security of the United States, that the safety and security of the American people, his prime responsibility, warrant that kind of a decision.
So it's possible we could see these shoot downs on a regular basis like we saw over the weekend?
I don't think it's useful for me to get ahead of where we are right now. The president will always side on preserving and protecting the safety and security of the American people.
You said we're not flying any surveillance balloons over China. Are we flying any other kind of surveillance craft routinely over China?
We are not flying surveillance balloons over China. I'm not aware of any other craft that we're flying over into Chinese airspace.
And then finally,
Notice that he said into Chinese airspace, but we are observing and watching China from space itself. I mean, you have to listen to John Kirby here because he's being very careful on what he's saying and the type of language that he's utilizing here. And he's really not being transparent whatsoever, even though he said he is being transparent up to a certain point, which they're not. We literally don't know anything here other than the fact they shot down some sort of craft. We've gotten more information from the press than we have the actual White House that's supposed to be protecting us, of which he's saying Joe Biden's doing.
can you tell us anything more about this octagonal object? How big was it?
We're still trying to assess what that was. I'm not going to get into a description. I've seen the press reports about what it looked like. I think we all need to be humble here in terms of what our ability is to positively identify stuff from fighter aircraft that are going several hundred miles an hour past, essentially, in terms of relative motion, a stationary object that was not very big. So we don't know what this exactly looked like, and again, we're still not sure exactly what the purpose of it was or who owned it. But we hope to be able to find out more once we can recover the debris from that one and from the other two as well.
I'm sorry, I just don't believe that one bit. I mean, you are really throwing our military under the bus by saying, oh, well, you know, we got to really humble ourselves. At this point, really, because I've actually seen aircraft video before, which is phenomenal video, and I didn't even see the HD version. I'm like, holy crap, you guys got footage of this type of stuff? This is nuts. This is great video. I mean, the whole aspect of him saying, oh, well, we got to humble ourselves. First of all, just the fighter pilots themselves are trained to be able to spot certain objects from like a mile away at high speeds, flying past these things and identifying them. You're not going to just shoot something out of the sky just willy-nilly. You're going to identify it somewhat. You just said that it was unmanned. How would you know that if you didn't have solid imagery on what the heck's going on with this object, of which you just said was unmanned? He's going to go on and talk about, well, there's no propulsion from it. It's basically just flying through the wind. So they have all this stuff. You can't use all these descriptive things about unmanned, flying through the wind, no propulsion, you know, the shape of it or whatever it's going to be, and then say, oh, well, you know, we got to humble ourselves. We don't really know what's going on. We don't really have the great imagery. You know, it's stationary, flying, you know, 500 miles an hour, whatever it may be that they're actually flying at. It's a bunch of silliness coming from John Kirby, but the silliness will continue, of course.
Just a few minutes ago, Prime Minister Trudeau said that there's some sort of pattern to the objects over the last few days. Is that something you could elaborate on, what sort of pattern the White House has seen?
I'm not familiar with the Prime Minister's comments, so I don't know if I should take a swing at that. I would just tell you that, going back to what I said before, these objects were not being maneuvered. They did not appear to have any self-propulsion. So the likely hypothesis is that they were being moved by the prevailing winds. And maybe perhaps that's what the Prime Minister is talking about. I don't want to speak for him, but certainly as the prevailing winds, particularly at that altitude, go west to east across the North American airspace, I mean, there was a general common movement in that regard.
You spoke at the top about kind of reassessing radar given what happened with the initial balloon. Can you give us a sense, can we expect, should we assume that this is the regular number of these objects over the United States, that they've always been there and they just haven't been looked at the same way? Or is there any reason to expect that this is more than usual that are flying over?
So two thoughts there. I mean, I think we can all get our heads around the fact that there are sometimes things floating at high altitudes for various purposes. As I said, scientific research, weather balloons, all manner of innocuous craft can be aloft at high altitudes. I don't think that that's necessarily unusual here. It's difficult for me to say exactly what you can expect going forward. One of the reasons that we think we're seeing more is because we're looking for more. As you heard General Van Herk mention last night, they have modified the filters and the gains, as we call it, of the radar capabilities to look more discreetly at high altitude, small radar cross section, and low speed objects. And so if you do that, anybody that's operated a radar will know you can set the parameters, and if you set the parameters in such a way that to look for a certain something, it's more likely that you're going to find a certain something.
Given all you,
I want to pause it there because, and we'll come back to this in just one moment because there's a follow-up question here that I think it's just the response from John Kirby is just it's an asinine statement, but it's interesting here. They talk about, well, the radar, the gain on it basically has to be adjusted so you can find these smaller objects that are going at lower speeds, but it kind of throws our military and our national security under the bus because it just shows you that we haven't been looking at this stuff for literally years. And that's why the Trump administration didn't see it. But yet we had reports that Chinese were flying these balloons all across the United States under the Trump administration, but they didn't know about it. So in the same way, the reason why we're not blowing all this stuff out of the sky in 2021 or 2022 is because we didn't know about it. So now all of a sudden, when we find this Chinese freaking 3-bus tiered thing, this balloon flying all the way across the United States because Joe Biden didn't have the balls to blow it out of the sky right when he saw it, that now we're zooming in and going, oh my God, maybe there's stuff flying across the United States that we're not aware of. Yes, you're right. But why is it taking so long to do this? Because our military is falling asleep, you guys. And this is why you should be worried, because you got China wanting to invade Taiwan. You got obviously Russia saying they want to nuke everybody and obviously invaded Ukraine. You got Iran wanting to blow us to bits and blow Israel to bits. I mean, you got all this stuff going on. We can't even protect our own airspace over here. So now we got a wake up call going, holy crap, there's stuff going on in our airspace. Now we got to start taking care of it. But then we're going to pretend like we don't know anything about the objects that were blown out of the sky. It's so silly. Of course we know the objects. I mean, we are really throwing our military under the bus here. So those are the two avenues. John Kirby's lying to us about some of this stuff, or our military just is that bad in terms of technology because we're not putting the amount of funding that we need to in it. And now we're in deep trouble here because, well, we can't even identify a freaking balloon flying across the sky anymore. Or we can't identify if it's a freaking drone. We can't identify anything because, again, that's where our military is at. I hope that's not the case. I don't actually believe that. I believe our military has great optics. I believe we have high definition cameras. We're the best fighter pilots in the world. I don't believe anything John Kirby's given me here. Some of it I do. But the majority of it I think is a bunch of hocus pocus. And I don't like him standing on the podium in front of the rest of the world going, well, we got to humble ourselves. We don't really know what the objects are, but they were unmanned and given certain details. It's just, we're not spying on the Chinese either. I mean, I understand you're not going to say that on the podium, but come on. We can all read between the lines here. I don't like his messaging here. But here's a great question from another reporter asking about our national security and if our borders are safe. And watch his response right now.
Discussed here the actions the administration is taking and what people have learned. Chinese spy balloon this year and previous years, these unidentified objects that we shoot down, they might have a question. When it comes to these higher altitudes, are America's borders secure?
The president takes, as I said earlier, he takes our national security extremely seriously. He has no higher responsibility than the safety and security of the American people. And I don't think.
Does anybody believe that? He couldn't even look at the guy straight in the face when he was giving his response there. Yeah, look at the southern border. Really, folks? You think Joe Biden cares about our national security with the cartel coming through, violent gang members coming through, you have massive fentanyl coming through, you have a litany of other drugs coming through, you have sex trafficking taking place, you have sex trafficking of minors taking place. I mean, don't give me this that our national security is a thing. We've also caught 23 terrorists or more now at this point coming across the border as well. We don't know about the sleeper cells that have poured across that we don't know about, the gotaways that haven't been mentioned by this administration. So this whole thing about our national security, you got to give me a break on it. He hasn't done a job at all these last 2 years of him being president. And so now that we're blowing stuff out of the sky, all of a sudden he's going, oh my God, maybe I got to start worrying about this because there's stuff flying across. But let's continue here.
You need to look any further, quite frankly, than the decisions he's made in just the last week to 10 days to evidence that.
But it feels like he's plugging holes. Like these are vulnerabilities that we are discovering in real time.
You're making an assumption there that I don't know that the analysis will actually bear out.
Brian in the back.
Thank you very much. The president gave the order.
So they're going to continue here with the president getting orders. They're going to try to continue their line of questioning regarding more of specifics on what's going on with these craft, what's going on with these orders, how are these orders being conducted, what's actually going on behind the scenes. And here's John Kirby's response.
To shoot down the object over Lake Huron yesterday. Where was he? What kind of information did he have when he gave that order? What was briefed to him? And how did he anticipate the outcome of that?
He was here in the White House. He was kept constantly informed by his national security team and certainly by the military. He made that decision. I couldn't give you the exact time on the clock, but it was, I believe, mid to late morning, and then it was executed in the afternoon.
Were there contingencies in place in case there was a reaction from a foreign government in reaction to shooting that object down? Was the president anticipating the one yesterday? Yeah.
Well, it was shot over. I mean, it was shot over Lake Huron and landed in what we believe to be the Canadian side of the lake. So we were obviously in constant communication and consultation with our Canadian counterparts, and they are rightly, because of where we think it splashed down. I mean, they're sort of in concert with the U.S. Coast Guard, but they are also involved in in trying to locate the debris right now. But there was good communication with our Canadian allies.
Signs of a foreign government taking a special interest in that object from yesterday?
No.
Or reacting in an unusual way?
No.
Good. SV in the back.
So not much again coming from John Kirby. I find it interesting that you have the Pentagon, you have officials in the military kind of reaching out to the president saying, hey, we got something on radar. This is what we have. You know, Joe Biden, you would imagine any sitting president with also our commanders sitting around him going, hey, you know what? We don't know what it is. We got some ping on radar. Let's go ahead and just blow the thing out of the sky. I would obviously imagine that's not the case. They had imagery of this stuff. They knew it was unmanned, like I said. They knew the objects, the shape. They know a lot of information about this before they're coming out. Again, you don't just go blow freaking something out of the sky just willy-nilly. I know I'm repeating myself here, but it's so cockamamie of an answer going, well, we don't really know what it is. You know, we got to humble ourselves. I'm very aware, you guys, that I'm repeating myself, but it's just an astonishing messaging coming from the White House here. You think they would kind of be a little bit more, I don't know, professional and more transparent on this whole thing that's going on here? You can give us a little bit more information. We're not idiots. But here's Jacqui Heinrich of Fox News asking her question about, you know, hey, what's going on with this whole thing? Give us some more details. And here's what takes place.
Screen. Thanks, John. John, does the U.S. government have video or imagery of these latest intercepts, and will you guys be releasing it?
You'd have to talk to DOD about that, Jackie. I don't know what kind of imagery might exist, and they'd be the one to talk about whether they're releasable or not. Obviously.
What? Again, it gives you credence to what I was just saying, that they're coming on the podium and there's no credibility here from these people. It's always, I don't know, you got to talk to somebody else. We saw this again with the classified documents. You got to talk to this person. You got to talk to that person. If you're going to stand there on the podium and talk to the American people by talking to the press and answering their questions, you haven't met with the DOD on this thing. I mean, wouldn't you try to gather as much intel on this, knowing that you're going to stand on the podium? You can't have a team that asks a litany of questions that you're probably going to have from reporters, or heck, talk to the reporters before, be like, you guys got any questions that I can maybe get answered by the Pentagon or the DOD or somebody before I step on this podium? Like, I would rather you wait a day to talk to everybody and gather and compile some questions so that we can actually get some answers here on what the heck is going on. Do you have imagery about this? Well, I don't know. We might, you know, it could be like 480K or something. I mean, we might have some Polaroids of it, you know. It's like, come on. Great question by Jackie, though.
Obviously, certainly with respect to the spy balloon, we want to make sure that we are gleaning what we can from this imagery so that we can answer your questions better. And so to what degree there is or will or will not be public release, I do want to stress that, you know, we're going to want to make sure that we have had a chance to analyze that imagery for ourselves as much as possible.
Following up on Phil's question, I mean, I guess what we're trying to discern is, you said earlier, you know, we're looking for these more, so we're finding more. And
I said that could be one reason why we're finding more.
One reason, but what we're getting at is, you know, why are we all of a sudden shooting them down? And to add to that, you know, the NORAD commander, for instance, said that when the first spy balloon was crossing over American and Canadian airspace, one of the reasons that he couldn't take action was because his assessment was that it didn't pose a military threat or have hostile intent, and so he couldn't take action there. It seems like maybe that protocol has changed, or his ability to make that call where there is not an imminent threat militarily or physically might have changed. So can you explain to us what changed? Why are we shooting them down all of a sudden?
I kind of feel like I took care of that in my opening statement, but I'm happy to revisit it. I mean, really two reasons here. And these are certainly in both cases, they're different. I mean, I think we need to separate the Chinese spy balloon. We knew what it was. We knew where it was going. We knew what it was trying to do. And by not taking it down, I mean, that was also a huge payload. Like I said,
you guys help me out here, because we're all in this together trying to understand what this guy's talking about. Well, we knew this Chinese spy balloon. We knew what it was. We knew where it was going. We knew all this information about it, so we didn't blow it out of the sky. But then if you were to correlate that to these other objects of what she's been saying for the last few segments that we've watched together, well, we don't really know much about it. We can't really talk about the shape. You know, we might have some imagery on it. It's really hard to tell. We got to humble ourselves with our fighter jets and our pilots that are behind those fighter jets and what they could see going certain speeds with small objects. So we don't really know for sure exactly what it was, but we decided to blow it out of the sky immediately. So on one hand, the Chinese spy balloon, you know exactly what it is, you know exactly what it's doing, you know the size and everything about it. You don't blow it out of the sky immediately. But then there's these other objects you know nothing about, supposedly, that you just blew out of the sky willy-nilly. Does that make sense? Because it doesn't to me. It doesn't to me, but that's the understanding that I'm getting from John Kirby here.
The size of 3 school buses. So really the option of shooting that down over land wasn't a legitimate option because somebody really could have gotten hurt. And we used the time available to us, knowing what this thing was all about. We used that time to study it, to learn from it, to collect on it. Then taking it down at the earliest opportunity in the water. And we have retrieved some of that debris off the bottom, and we're studying that. Hang on a second, I'll be right there. But so let's separate that from these other 3. And these other 3, what are some of the differences? Altitude's a big difference.
Is that the threshold now? A risk to civilian aircraft?
Let me get through this, and then altitude's different. The Chinese spy balloon was at 60,000 plus, well outside commercial air traffic concerns. These 3 were right on the border of it, so there was a legitimate concern there. Chinese spy balloon, we knew exactly what that thing was, and we knew what it was trying to do, and we saw it, Jacqui, as it slowed down, sped up, maneuvered a little bit, trying to get a look at what we believe to be sensitive military sites. These other 3, they didn't have propulsion, they weren't being maneuvered, it was basically they were being driven by the wind. We don't know for sure whether they had a surveillance aspect to them, but we can't rule it out. So there was enough uncertainty there that, again, out of an abundance of caution, doing the prudent thing, the president directed that they get taken down. And I get where you're going. Is this the standard going forward? And we're gonna dive into this. We're gonna learn from these 3 events.
Guys, I'm sorry, but it sounds like my thinking's correct. It's we knew what one thing was. Gather all the intelligence you want. We'll blow you out of the sky later. We don't know what the hell you are, but we're gonna blow you out right now. Yes. If you summed it up in 10 seconds, that's exactly what he's saying here. It's the same diarrhea mouth that basically comes from Karine Jean-Pierre. They're hiding something, you guys. As far as what it is, I have no idea. No, they said it wasn't extraterrestrial. I mean, literally Karine Jean-Pierre said it wasn't extraterrestrial. That was her opening statement. And he said the same thing. He said there's no, it's not aliens, period. So just so you know, it's supposedly not UFOs, UAPs, whatever you want to say, even though they're using the term UAPs in here, which has highly been connected to Lula Elizondo's kind of UAP program where he's basically come out and said, look, there's aliens out there. So do what you will with that information, but who the heck knows if it's aliens or not? Well, I don't know.
We're going to continue to study what happened. We're going to have an interagency effort that helps us get around the policy implications here, and we'll see where this goes. But bottom line for President Biden is, you got to do the right thing for the American people, for our safety and security.
Is it strange that no one's claimed these yet as theirs?
I can't say whether that's strange or not, since we're sort of in uncharted territory here, no pun intended. But we don't know, and I suspect that Go ahead. I'm basically done.
Okay.
I'm basically done.
Sir, what's your name, sir?
Oh, from CBS.
Okay.
And it really is remarkable answers coming from this White House. The lack of answers just in general. Well, we don't know. This is an admiral, you guys. This guy's been in the military for Lord only knows how long. And these are the types of answers he's giving. And he's contradicting himself in his own statements, trying to make, oh, well, the Chinese balloon's different. You know, it's different than the other 3 we shot down. We know nothing about these other 3, but we know everything about the Chinese spy balloon. We want to make sure they gather as much intel as possible before we actually shot it out of the sky because it wasn't in air traffic space. You guys, come on. This is silly. This is such a joke coming from the White House, but this is how they're going to treat it. So either it's a nothing burger or there's really something there. And I've heard from like Dan Crenshaw, that's part of the intelligence committee that's been briefed on this stuff. He said, you know, it's not as sexy as everybody's making it out to be. Like there's really nothing there regarding these objects. The guy was a Navy SEAL, so I'm sure he's seen some sort of imagery. I'm sure he's had pretty much what the president's seeing. So he's not saying it's very sexy. So it's probably not. I don't know what it is. I would imagine if it was another balloon, they would say so. I don't know, but you guys can leave me your guesses down there in the comment section below. I know some of you think it's aliens. I know some of you think it's China or heck, I don't know, Russia. I honest to God don't know what it is. They said it wasn't aliens. I don't believe the government. Okay. I'm not a big fan of the government. We've seen how much they've lied to us to our faces already since Joe Biden's been in office and even before. So let me know. Can we just all write in the chat right now? Don't forget to hit that like button. What you think these what these craft are, objects. That's what the UAPs, that's literally from John Kirby calling it UAPs during this White House press briefing as well. Let's end it off here with another segment of John Kirby being questioned on these UAPs, the UFOs, the objects in the craft, and let's see what he has to say.
No.
Iraq's?
Right there.
Okay.
Admiral, you started the briefing by talking about the president's involvement in this. The report from ODNI recently that goes over this. In that ODNI report about unidentified aerial phenomena, it says there were 247 unidentified aerial phenomenon reports since March of 2021, some of which have, quote, demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities. So can you say why the president just recently, within the last couple of weeks, started ordering some of these objects to be shot down, and why there weren't any orders throughout 2021 or throughout 2022?
It's very simple. It comes down to what sort of safety and security threats and risk we're talking about, and also it comes down to a lot to our ability to track, detect, and engage. Having come from the Pentagon, I can tell you that some of these UAPs, while we may not be able to know what each and every one is doing, some of the big concern there was that many of those reports were happening around our training ranges, were happening around air training ranges. So combat pilots were seeing these things, and there was a potential impact to the safety of flight of our pilots. But you may not have but a fleeting moment on some of these things to see it. And so it's different. In these cases,
I would like to point out, one, it's crazy that he's just going to talk about UAPs like, it's just a normal thing to talk about. You guys, it is not a normal thing to just talk about UFOs and UAPs. They're the same type of thing. They just changed the wording. You guys, our military is engaging with UAPs off the East Coast and West Coast where I live every single day, every single week, and we don't know what they are. If you want to YouTube, we've talked about the Nimitz, we've talked about the Princeton, Commander Fravor engaging with the Tic Tac, the gimbal video. We've done all of that. I highly recommend you do a deep dive because our pilots are coming out and again saying that we're engaging these craft, not like actual moving craft that are engaging with us, going to different locations, coming out of the sky from like 80,000 feet to a foot above sea level. I'm not trying to get into conspiracy theories here. It's just a fact of what we've caught on radar with our own pilots. These guys aren't idiots. They're given multi-million-dollar aircraft to fly on taxpayer dollars dime and entrusted to protect us with this craft. They know what they're talking about. They're just not idiots. So it's amazing to me that the White House is like, oh yeah, there's UAPs and, we've studied this stuff and not really giving any specifics. But yet the reporter was talking about, hey, there's been a ton of these objects that have maneuvers, propulsion, things that we don't even know about that actually been talked about in terms of it being a UFO or UAP, and trying to correlate it to with what's being shot out of the sky. Is there any connection here? And again, the White House has said they're not aliens. How would they know? He's coming out and go, well, we don't know much about the object. We're going to have to analyze and look at the imagery and all these other things. It could be. Who the hell knows? I'm not saying it is or isn't, but it's just amazing to me that you're going to say it's not UFOs or aliens rather, but yet at the same time, you're going to talk about UAPs. It's such a spider web, and it makes you wonder. Usually it's a spider web when somebody's trying to cover up something or give a load of BS. Because usually truth is very linear. It's just like, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, you connect the dots, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're all good. That makes sense. I can go from point A to point C really quickly, or point A to point Z rather quickly. Here you're like, what's going on? That's why the room, as I mentioned, it's standing room only, you guys. You saw the press room. I've been covering every single briefing for literally 2 years now since we started the show. I've never seen the room like that before, ever. So this is a big deal. There's something going on here. We don't know what.
we had time to detect, time to analyze, time to engage, time to make those kinds of decisions. But it all comes down to safety and security, first and foremost.
So is the time, though, is a matter of capability? We have better capabilities now than we did back
We are
then?
certainly improving our capabilities now. And as I said, the president has directed the national security team to dig into this deeper from an interagency effort and to see what, if other improvements might need to make. I mean, look, just by adapting the way the radar parameters are set, we have improved our ability to detect. And again, I said that could be one reason why we're seeing more.
I guess
Again, I don't disbelieve them on that. I actually do believe that just because they changed the certain frequency and the gain on the radar, that they're actually able to visually see more objects, which I think is a good thing. I think that is a very good thing, and I think you're going to see more objects being blown out of the sky. I just want to make sure that we do get answers to our questions about what these objects are and what's flying over our skies. Are we just shooting private civilian stuff out of the sky willy-nilly? Like, is it a party balloon from freaking Party City? Like, what are we shooting out of the sky? Can we at least get any answers here? It's been well over a week on some of this stuff, and we don't even know anything. So, but be humble, you guys. Our military doesn't have a clue, which I think is a lie. I think our military knows exactly what these things are. They were able to tell us that it was unmanned. They're able to tell us that there was no propulsion. You're not able to give those types of things unless you had actual good visual detail on what's going on, actually studied it for quite some time to see what the heck the thing is that you're about to shoot out of the sky. But, hey, it could be aliens, it could be UFOs, objects, crafts. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. As always, support the show by hitting that like and subscribe button. Don't forget, folks, we have announcements coming up. We're going to be doing something towards the end of February. I'm going to try to lock down a date here within the next week or so we can all schedule and plan around and have a little bit of fun for like 20, 30 minutes so I could show you all the stuff that we're going to unleash here on the Bald Brad channel. Again, be on the lookout for that. I'll put in the community tab and basically just do a bunch of announcements so we're all here together. You guys are awesome. You're true American patriots, and I'll see you tomorrow here on the Bald Brad Show.